All right, just want to first see that it is working and going live, and then we will start from there. Usually about a 30-second delay, give or take. And it should be any moment. There we go. And we are officially live. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is Chris, and this is my channel, Barn on 11970. I thought I would do another last-minute kind of spur-of-the-moment live chat, and hopefully we'll get some teaching here. As usual, I don't know how long this will go because I usually don't even plan what I'm about to say, and we just kind of go with the flow. So with that being said, I'd like to welcome those who are already starting to watch. I appreciate that. And this is going to be one of those live actions where you can participate if you so desire. You can ask questions. If you've watched live chats before, you'll see this one's a little different because normally you'll see the scrolling live chat where you could leave comments. The reason I don't do that and I do this a little differently is I've noticed, especially when there's a lot of people commenting, sometimes there's so many people commenting, it scrolls so fast that you'll never see half the questions. So half the questions basically disappear. So what I have here is a different feature that I added. And the way you could do that to ask the question, and every question shows up right in front of me, and it stays there until I delete it. So I will see every question that people leave. So what you do is, if you look on the bottom left-hand corner where you see where it says be part of the conversation, click here. If you click on that, you will see another window open. Look for the top right-hand corner where you see where it's looks like a white Rubik's Cube type of icon. Click on that, and you will be able to see the question and answer. And for those of you looking at the questions, because you'll be able to see that on your window as well, you can thumb up a question. So the more thumbs up that question gets, the higher up on the list it will go. So if you see something that you think is really important, then you can put that on and thumb it up, and it will go from there. So as you could see in the title of this video, I want to go over a couple of legal definitions. Now, if you don't already have one of these, and I've gone over this a few times, but I have tons of new people. I mean, we're up to almost 23,000 subscribers at this point, which is just amazing. But if you do not have this book, the Black's Law Dictionary, I highly recommend it. Now, you want to get one of the older volumes. You want volume at least 5th edition or less, because they changed a lot of it over the years, which makes it a lot harder to find definitions out. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know how I talk about how they disguise the truth in hidden meanings. They put things in definitions, they put it in ordinary language, and it's what's called hidden in plain sight, where things are right in front of you, so you don't pay attention to them, or you just think it's ridiculous because when you go to public schools, they program you in a certain direction. So I can understand where this can seem a little crazy for people, but once you start seeing the pattern, you start noticing that it's either one hell of a coincidence or these things do have a deeper meaning. So the first thing I've talked about so much is the fact that we are basically considered property, and we are labeled by legal definitions. Now, there's an old saying that says, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So just because you're not familiar or don't believe in certain things does not change the law. You could run over a person with a car, get pulled over, and tell the cop, well, I don't believe that I did anything wrong. Well, that's irrelevant. Or if you go through a speeding zone in the school area, and you're not allowed to go more than 15 miles an hour, and you get pulled over doing 20, and you say, well, I didn't know I couldn't go that fast. Well, that's not going to stop you. So just because you don't believe in a law or are not familiar with the law does not mean it does not hold precedent. And with any law is concerned, until it is basically abolished, it doesn't matter how long ago a law was in effect, it will continue to be effective as long as they want to use it. So when a law is produced is irrelevant, whether it came out yesterday or it came out in the late 1700s, it's still going to hold precedent. So if you have a Black's Law Dictionary, and I have the 4th pocket edition, you could get them at eBay for under $20. We're going to start with the word corporation. Now, of course, we use this word all the time. When you think of a corporation, you just think of a business. That's what they want you to think. They don't want people to actually search these things because there's an old saying that says, seek and you shall find. So let's read from the Black's Law Dictionary what the legal definition of corporation is. Now, again, legal definitions are different than just ordinary words. They have different meanings. Okay, so according to the Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, the definition of corporation is defined as an entity having authority under law to act, now get this, as a single person distinct from the shareholders who own it and having rights to issue stock and exist indefinitely. So that's part of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to look up the term person. Now, again, it's legal definitions. So whether you believe in it or not, like me or not, or whatever, is irrelevant. So if you look under the definitions of person, and there are so many subcategories, but the one we want is right here. It's the living body of a human being, and they put in parentheses, contraband found on a smuggler's person. And now here's the key. An entity such as a corporation that is recognized by law as having most of the rights and duties of a human being. So right there, the word corporation and the word person in legal definition are basically the same thing. So what people have to understand is that you're not what you think you are as far as legally defined. And I've said so many times about describing what a corporation is, because most people just take it for granted because you don't think about these things, because when they don't discuss it in the news, when they don't talk about it in school, and you don't see it on the television, you don't bring up questions you're not thinking about. And that's what they want. They want you smart enough to work the machines, but not smart enough to question why. So when you think about corporations, what do people think about? And I've used this in several examples. If you think of the corporation, let's just say Dairy Queen. Now, if you have a corporation and you think of Dairy Queen, well, what is the corporation? Now, there will be people that think, okay, it's a business. It's the business building. Well, no, that's just the place where they meet. What about it at the main office where all the shareholders meet? Again, that's just the room they meet in a building. So what is it that is the corporation itself? Well, the corporation itself is just the word Dairy Queen. So when I talk about you as an individual, and you could, this is anywhere in the world, so it's not just the US. All countries are corporations. When I say things and other people say things like, you are a corporation, it's not you, the physical being. It's your name written on a piece of paper that has been registered. Because if you've ever had a business and you went to incorporate or register the name, that's all you're doing. So if you want to start Joe Schmo's Pizza Parlor and you want to make a registered business and you want to incorporate that business because you eventually want a Joe Schmo's Pizza Parlor franchise, well, all you're doing is sending money in, and they give you a registration form, basically, to register that name, and the name is what's the corporation. So when I talk about things like Washington, D.C. being a corporation, it's just the name. The same thing with the United States, the same thing with Canada, the same thing with Australia. The names are the corporation. They are registered trademarks. And it's all in the words. I mean, if you look at the definition of human being, now I've talked about the fact with even religion, how they try and change things. And I know when you talk about religion and politics, it makes people angry. Unfortunately, there's a purpose behind that, because if you're angry, you won't want to listen. And if you don't want to listen, you may not learn different things. So of course they want you to hear no evil, speak no evil, and see no evil. That's why they show 3 monkeys, because that's what they view most people as. And then you'll have the people who just don't want to hear things. Now, belief is irrelevant, because I've said it so many times. You don't see air in front of you. You can't describe it. You can't know it's even there with your human eyes, but yet you still breathe it. So it doesn't matter if you believe it. So if you look at the word, and I talked about with religion how quote unquote God or an entity is within all of us. Now, if you see the word human, just the definition, if you break it down, and again, people don't research these things, they don't look into the deeper levels, and that's what entraps them, and that can be dangerous in the long run in the grand scheme of things, because if there is a bigger picture than us just being placed on this earth to work, spend a lot of money, get a lot of bills so other people can be rich until you die, there's got to be more to life than just that kind of servitude, because that's basically slavery, isn't it? I don't think, if you're even a very religious person, that if you read the Bible, it basically says God made Adam, God made Eve, and then he made a toll booth and a tax collector. But think of the word human. Well, what is the word hue? Well, if you look up the word hue, and we're going to go by definitions. I'm not just picking things, out of a hat. So let's go according to the Oxford English Dictionary. The word, in quote, God can be plausibly derived from the Sanskrit word hue. So they're saying in the Oxford English Dictionary, so this is not me picking it from some random YouTube website or some random website, or just the person saying it. This is from the Oxford English Dictionary. HU stands for God. Hue, man. God, man. Man in God. So what God is nothing more than a legal, it's just a definition. It's not a name, it's a title. That's why if I asked you what your name is, you're not going to say human, God man. You're going to say John or Bill or Barbara or Fred or whatever. So God is just an interpretation. Which God are you referring to? Depends on who you pray to, or you don't pray to anyone at all. But how interesting is that in the word human, which they are saying we are human being, we are being a God in man. There's God in man, human. And think of it in hidden words. And again, I know this stuff sounds odd, but when you start seeing the bigger picture of how many things go with coincidence with these things, it's either one hell, like I said, a coincidence, or there's something to it. I mean, like you say, I was online at my, not a bank because I don't have a bank, but I have a federal credit union. I was online making a deposit, and I just happened to see a person in front of me with a license plate from, I think, Virginia or something like that. And on the license plate, it said, "In God we trust." Now, I'm sure you've seen that numerous times. You've seen it on your currency. You've seen it lots of places. You've seen it said constantly. And then I thought about when you break down the words. In God, inner, you think inside, inner God, the God inside us. We trust. We, the people, are trusts. Remember when I said that we are corporations and they make trusts in our name? So think about that. In God, inner God, God within us, and we, in the separate, we trust. We are a trust. Is that crazy? It sure sounds like it. It can be. But if you look at things at a different perspective, it makes you see things that are a coincidence. That's why they use terminology that goes along with it. Like, for example, if somebody asked you, you're calling from somebody out of state and they say, where do you live? And you say, oh, I live in Texas. Do you really live in Texas? Because last time I checked, only dead people are in the ground. You're above it, aren't you? But you see how you're conditioned to use those terms, and you will just say, oh, that's just words. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. That is so untrue, because a name or a word is a sound. A sound vibrates. It's vibrating energy. You don't think it can affect you? Have a piercing sound destroy your eardrums. Have a low vibration give you a headache. Have nails on a chalkboard make you cringe. None of those things are physically touching you, but you could make a piercing sound so high and so loud, it could destroy your eardrum. So something that supposedly can't hurt you, right there is proven to be false. I mean, if you think about the difference between physical damage and mental damage. Well, if you slip and fall and scrape your elbow, yeah, that's going to hurt, and it could actually leave a bruise or even a cut, or you could bleed, but it will heal. A mental scar can last a lifetime. Just imagine you're a young teenager, you meet the girl or guy of your dreams, the first person you ever fell in love with, and this is the one, and you want to spend your whole rest of your life with them, and they turn around and say, you know what, you're the biggest piece of garbage that I ever met. I cheated on you the whole time. You meant nothing. See you later. I'm going with your best friend. I guarantee you, when you're in your 90s on your deathbed, you will still remember that, and you will still feel that pain. So that whole sticks and stones little nursery rhyme they program you to believe in as a child is just another way to make you dismiss what seems different. And that's why if you look at legal definitions, when I talk about you as a corporation, a registered name, because that's all it is, and they make a trust in your name that they make profit off of your entire lifetime, and they cash in on that trust when you die or when you go to jail. That's why there's so many laws that can imprison you, which I find funny because some of my haters, some of them have been incarcerated. Me, on the other hand, worst thing I've ever had was a traffic ticket for speeding, and that was probably about 15 years ago. So if you look at just the definitions in the words, well, if you're with a bunch of people you like, you could say you're in good company. If you want somebody to leave you alone or not pay attention, money, pay attention, you can tell them to mind their own business. It's in the words. That's why when you're legally dead, you are a corpse, a corporation. That's why you have a mortgage, a mortgage. Look up the word M-O-R-T. That's why when you die, you go to a mortuary with a mortician. It's all in the words. That's why you wake up in the morning. Well, where else can you mourn? And you wake up. Well, where else can you go to awake? These are all definitions to say, here it is. It's right in front of you, but you won't see it. Now, why would people do that? Well, because if you don't expect something and something's right there, you tend to not pay attention to it. How many things throughout life, as you're driving to work or going to your friend's house or going out to party or whatever, that you just see that you just don't pay attention to? So, for example, if you were a robber and you were robbing somebody's house, which I thoroughly recommend you don't do, it's not nice to take what's not yours. But if you are one of those scummy people of the earth and you go to rob somebody's house, well, where's one of the first places you're going to try and look for wealth in that house? Well, you're going to look in things like a safe. You're going to try and find a safe. And if you find a safe, you're pretty much guaranteed that inside that safe is going to be lots of valuables they don't want people to have. So that, to me, is not hidden because you'll know where those things are. Now, let's say you decide instead to put your valuables, you have a fish tank, and you have a bunch of gravel on the bottom of that fish tank. And you have, let's say, a bunch of gold coins, and you take those gold coins and you bury them in the gravel of that fish tank. Now, that would be easily accessible, wouldn't it? And it's right there for people to see. I mean, if somebody broke into your house and they're alone, they're not saying, let's go to that fish tank and see what's inside it. They're just going to walk past it and not even pay attention. But yet, it would be a lot easier to get those gold coins that were in that fish tank than they would be in the safe. But because it's hidden in plain sight, you'll just dismiss it. So the worst place to put things is in the place that's most predictable. And the more you hide something, the more people want to check and see what's there. I mean, if you've ever, just do an experiment. Do a hidden camera where you put a sign that says, do not press this button. And watch how many people, just because they're told not to do it, that they actually want to do it because it piques their curiosity. So again, if you want to ask any questions, all you have to do is look where it says, be a part of the conversation, click here, and you will see another window open. Look for the white Rubik's Cube in the top right-hand corner. Click on that. You'll see what says Q&A, and you can ask any questions, because I understand how frustrating this stuff is. I understand that most people may find this stuff crazy, but truth is stranger than fiction. And like I've said so many times, I mean, I wish we lived in a perfect world. I wish these things were not into play. Do you think I would rather spend my time with quote-unquote conspiracy theories and stuff, which, by the way, the word conspire just means when two or more people are planning to do something. They like to make things scary. Prime example, the word apocalypse. How many times has that been thrown out, especially since 2011, because of the supposed 2012 where we were supposed to be destroyed? And there's many videos that you could still look at today where they were predicting the end of the world. And they do it all the time. They've done it throughout history. What better way to scare people is to say that eventually we're coming to an end and it's happening in the future, so you can always say, well, it could happen. Anything can happen. But apocalypse, if you actually learn what the definition means, it means an unveiling. Well, when you hear that, it's not so scary, is it? But yet, you'll never see that in a movie. You'll never see that on a TV show or in the news when they talk about, oh, these are the apocalyptic times. We're hitting the apocalypse. I mean, look at the new X-Men movie that's coming out. What is the main villain's name? Apocalypse. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that ride along with him. Movie wouldn't sound as scary as if when people found out his name really means an unveiling, which means a discovery of truth. What's behind the curtain, oh Grand Wizard of Oz? Because if you watch the movie Wizard of Oz, wasn't there when Dorothy went with the Tin Man, the Lion, and the Scarecrow to the land of Oz to meet the wizard? He was very scary when they first met him, wasn't he? He was a flaming head demanding that people do what he says. Well, what does the news do? What do our governments do? Aren't they, and this is all throughout the world, aren't they trying to scare us all the time? But as you find, at the end, when Dorothy gained her wisdom through her experience by using her heart for the love, using her brain for the courage, and also for the intelligence, she learned that it was nothing more than just a man behind the curtain. And she had the power to go home all along. In other words, the power was within her. And that's why when you study deeper levels, you can see there's more to life than what you are told. And it's easily findable. I mean, I'll give you an example. How many people on my last live show, when I told people to look up Executive Order 11110, I wonder how many people actually looked it up. Now, you could do 3 things. When I say those things, you could have said, I believe you, so I will take your word for it. Or you could have said, I don't believe you, I will dismiss what you said. Or you could have looked it up to verify. Now, the first 2, whether you believed me or didn't believe me, well, you didn't know because you did not verify on your own. You took my word for it, or you dismissed my word on it. The ones that looked it up went to the next level. So I don't want people that agree with everything I say, just as much as I don't want people to automatically dismiss what I want to say, because it's only hurting yourself in the long run. What my job is to teach people to think for themselves, to stop relying on other people to do everything for you. Because like I was saying earlier, do I wish we had a perfect world? Absolutely. How wonderful would that be if there were no bills, if there were no responsibilities, that we could just live on this planet the way we were supposed to, live freely, to do what we wanted as long as we didn't infringe the rights of others. But we don't live in that world. We live in a world of corruption, of war, of the few that are very wealthy and the many who are not, where there are laws that will affect us that are not wealthy, but seem to go bye-bye when it comes to people of wealth and power. Does that seem fair? And yet we accept those things. And when others challenge it, The news media will dismiss us. They will laugh at us. They will attack us on a personal level. And that's why the people that have problems with me, who have been stalking me now for over 5 years, the same people who have a problem with me but yet continue to watch, they try and discredit me by taking words out of context, or maybe one or two words I talk about. They say, oh, look at that word. He said something wrong in his 1 hour, 2 hour video. 2 or 3 things he said wrong, so let's focus on that. And let's make a video showing just that one part. Is that biased? So when it comes to the situations that we are in, when we ignore them, we only hurt ourselves. And belief is the biggest control system. And I've said this so many times, and I like to say it over and over again, because like I said, I get so many new people. It's just something that I want to teach, because I like doing this, despite some of the negativity, and it's just few and far between at this point, because I could care less what a few people that stalk me for years have to say. Is most people, they're taught that if you see it, it must be real. If something is easy, it's too good to be true. Well, why is that? Because if you look at just basic math and basic geometry, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Unless you connect those 2 points together, if you know how to fold time and space, but we're not talking that. We're talking the basics. In other words, if you go from point A to point B and you just go a straight line, well, that's going to be the quickest route. If you squiggle it in any other way, it's going to take longer. So they basically try and convince you that if something is straight to the point, then there must be something wrong with it. Well, why? Why does it have to be? But they teach you that. And the question things makes you different from the crowd. So do you want to be popular and be wrong, or be the minority who tends to be more often right than wrong? Now, that doesn't guarantee that we're getting everything right. I'm not part of what the government does. I can only learn so much. So there will be bumps in the road. There will be misdirection. Sometimes there are mistakes made. But there is no intent to lie to people here. And that's why I find it funny when some of the people focus on, when I have my orgone pyramids, for example, and they'll say things like, oh, Chris, you must be a shill because you sell those things. Well, they can have that right to that opinion, and they're quick to judge somebody based on one video. But if you notice, the video that I actually sell those on, I teach people how to make them so they can do it themselves, so they don't have to buy from me. Now, is that what a shill would do? It doesn't sound like one to me, but again, there are people that want to have alternative motives. When somebody is harassing you for 5 years, there's a reason for that. There's plenty of people I don't like, but I'm not going to spend 5 years of my life telling them how much I don't like them. I mean, it's just, that's to me is crazy. That to me is stupid. But if you think about a belief system, think about, for example, your emotions: jealousy, rage, envy, lust. What creates those? What do they look like? Can you describe any of those emotions? Can you see them? Can you smell them? You can't. Science has not been able to prove where emotions come from. They can get a general idea, but they're not saying, oh, okay, this particular part secretes that, and this is what this looks like. They have not yet to find that, but yet you still feel it. But you're not holding gratitude in your hand and saying, oh, here's a scoop full of gratitude. I mean, you can have a handful of sand. You know what sand is. You could put it in your hand and look at it. You can't when it comes to love or envy or any of those emotions, but yet you still feel them. So that should prove to you that not everything can be seen or proven. Some things just are. So whether you believe in your emotions or don't believe in your emotions, it doesn't matter, because you're still feeling them, which means they're still relevant to you, even if you try and hide them. It's not weakness to show emotion, because that's sharing in who you are. Did you know that when you cry, you actually, in your tears, is saline and other toxins that you are releasing from your body? So do you ever hear the expression that, you'll feel better after a good cry? And they teach people, especially men, it's like, oh, you can't cry, you got to hold it in, you have to be a man. Well, think about that, what you're doing to yourself. When you get to the point where you keep yourself from crying and you do not allow the toxins to leave your body, you are leaving poisonous toxic chemicals in your body. Now, do you think that will be beneficial to you, or do you think that will be harmful to you? And people are so afraid because other people will judge them that they don't want to be who they are. They want you to be who they want you to be. And you could see it in this day and age where everything is so politically correct at this point that you're almost at the point, and will soon get there because you will get what you ask for, is where you almost can't say anything without being judged for it. And that's why when I talked about like that new movie, The Ghostbusters, forget the fact that it looks boring. Forget the fact that it doesn't look funny. Forget the fact that they're taking old jokes from the original movie and just making it with new characters. But if you don't like it, that means you're sexist. Really? Why does it have to be that way? Well, because everybody's programming you to. If you actually look on the creator of that movie's website, I think it's Sony, but I could be wrong. Correct me if I am. They have been proven, and there are many videos that you could look at this, where they were taking just respectful criticism of that movie, not hate, just saying point after point of logical things why they did not like that movie, and those were being deleted. And the words that were staying on there, and the comments that were staying on there, were the racist comments and the sexist comments. Why? Because then it makes it seem like, oh, the only people that don't want to watch this movie are either racist or sexist. Are you one of those two? Oh, you're not? So I guess you are going to see that movie. And what is it doing? Getting people to go spend their money on something that they may not want to because they feel like, well, I have to now. I don't want to be labeled as sexist. I don't want to be labeled as racist. And you're really worried about what other people think? There are so many people on here. Well, not even so many. There's a few that judge me. Even on my other channel, they judge me all the time. I did a video the other day on my other channel wishing everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day and don't drink and drive. It currently has 41 thumbs down. And that was basically it was like a 2-minute video where I said, I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. That I could see why they'd thumb it down if it was that, if I was wishing them a happy Thanksgiving on St. Patrick's Day. But all I did was wish people a happy Thanksgiving and say, please don't drink and drive, be safe, be responsible, get a taxi. And 41 thumbs down. So 41 people hated me for wishing them a safe and happy St. Patrick's Day. Makes sense, doesn't it? And I know who it is. It's some of the people from this channel who will remain nameless. And if they want to stay negative, that's on them. That's why 5 years from this moment, 5 years ago till now, they are still the same people. And it proves it. They're doing the same thing. And yet, I may be different, but I've grown. And that's what you need to do. And that's why people like Bruce Lee made statements like, be water. Water is always flowing. It is always changing. You could put your hand and scoop out water. You will never be able to scoop out the same water ever again because it's changed. It's flowed. We are all made of water. But water can be frozen stiff and it moves nowhere. You can have a pond that does not flow and it becomes stagnant and it smells and it's yucky. How's that for a technological term? It's the rivers that flow that have the cleanest water. So when it comes to things like corporations, when it comes to things like definitions, when it comes to the hidden in plain sights of the world, you can dismiss it, you could not believe in it, you can call it crazy, but it doesn't mean it's not accurate. It doesn't mean you should not verify. Dig deep. And if not, ask the questions why you don't want to do that. What is it that you're afraid of? That the world is not as wonderful as it seems? I mean, look at this country alone. They program into you that the United States corporation is the wealthiest country in the world. Well, if you look at usdebtclock.org, how many trillions of dollars are we in debt? Last time I checked, it was about, in total, $64 trillion in debt. Can anyone please answer this question? How are we the most wealthiest of the nations of this planet if we are $64 trillion in debt? That means we owe, supposedly, $64 trillion. Where's the wealth if we need to borrow money all the time? How does that make sense? And then the governments borrow money from a foreign bank known as the Federal Reserve. They earn plenty of interest off of it, even though the Federal Reserve does not produce anything, does not manufacture anything, does not sell anything. So I would love to know where these trillions of dollars are coming from. Certainly haven't earned it, which means they make it out of thin air. And then they pass on the bill to you, the people, who sit there and hate people like me. So the more income you make, the more they steal from you. Isn't that nice? They call it taxes. And they tell you in school, the public school, which is the government runs the public schools, don't they? They have a say in what can and cannot be taught. But they'll tell you that your taxes are going towards bridges and roads and schools. Does that wonder why places like Detroit have filed for bankruptcy and the roads around you are probably atrocious and we lack in education? I mean, how many things are we first in other than believing in angels and obesity and the most people imprisoned per capita? What are we number one at? We're number one at war, putting money that could be going towards helping people cure diseases, but they'd rather spend it on the military and war. We have, I think, 10 times more of our quote-unquote money placed into the military than the next, I think, 10 to 15 other countries, and 90% of those are our allies. And we keep allowing it, and yet people like me who question it, we're the crazy ones. They want you to cure diseases like cancer by injecting yourself or subjecting yourself to radiation. When was the last time you said, oh, you know what? I feel like a spa day. Let me go to the nearest nuclear plant and absorb some radiation. Or better yet, have it injected in me. But they call it a nice word like chemo, and people lose their hair and they lose their appetite because they're throwing up all the time. And that is supposed to be not crazy. The idea is to make you think in a different level. It's okay to have emotions, but not just one set of them. You notice how my tone throughout this whole video, if you've been listening the whole time, has been very monotone, very calm, very steady. It's because I can talk about things that may seem illogical, but because of the ways I've researched things, I can verify them. Now, that's not always easy. Sometimes information is wrong. Sometimes there is information that people could lie about. It is a very difficult road to travel. And most people will get frustrated along the way. And then you have the people who will make fun of you and laugh at you and dismiss you. I mean, I know people that talk about their family members, hate them because of what? Because of their caring for them? The idea is don't do it to get other people's approval. I don't do this because I want people kissing my rear end and saying, oh, Chris, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. Do I like when people say I've changed their life? Of course. Do I like it when people say nice things? Absolutely. Who wouldn't? But I'm not sitting here saying, I've got to do this video because I need somebody to tell me I'm great today. I don't need that. That's insecurity. And that's why I can do this by myself, despite the few people that group up to try and attack me. It's inner strength. It's being your inner God. You know, the Hugh man. If you want to believe the definitions you're told, you're going to see there is more and more inaccuracies in what you're being told. Like I said the other day, when you see the word bless, it has two meanings. Look it up. One of the word definitions in the Bible for the word bless, and it's an older definition, so like I said, age has nothing to do with things. It will still stay in effect. but the other word for bless is to curse. So when a politician says, you know, something like, for example, God bless the citizens of the United States, you know, what God are they referring to? What meaning are they meaning for the word bless? And persons, they're talking about illegal corporations. Like, for example, when I talk about legal terms, when people say, oh, well, it's just a word, how does it mean anything? Sound like Sylvester Stallone there for a second. You ever saw or heard of the TV show Gilligan's Island? Well, if you know about Gilligan's Island, if you haven't, it was a cool show back in the 60s. They got stranded on a desert island for, I think, like 7 or 8 years, somewhere around there. Now, as you can see in the TV show, they finally get rescued, but they were alive, weren't they? Well, in their native states that they lived in, and in the country of the United States, they would have been presumed legally dead. Now, there's a difference between being actually dead and legally dead. It's all about the definitions. That's why if you saw that Tom Hanks movie, I forget the name of it, but where he's on a plane, it crashes into the ocean, he ends up on a deserted desert island. And when he finally rescues himself, and they have him in the hotel room where he's eating all this food and having ice in his glass for the first time in years, as his friends were leaving the room when he was getting ready to go to bed, they said, well, you know, there's a lot of paperwork to bring you back from the dead. He didn't die. He was legally dead. And that's what I want to drill into people. When you look at your driver's license, when you look at your birth certificate, your birth, B-E-A-R-T-H, which is originally what it comes from. When docs used to come in from overseas into the land, they birthed, B-E-A-R-T-H. So when you're born, they take blood out of the bottom of your foot. In other words, the bottom of your foot is called the sole. Just a word, not anything scary. And they do take blood when you're a baby, when you're born. They extract blood from you. Why do they do that? What would be the purpose behind that? What benefit is it to have a newborn baby and the first thing you do is stick a needle in it and take out blood? Do anyone ever question why they do that? Does that sound like something you would do? If you had a baby in the forest, you were a caveman, let's say there was such thing as cavemen, and you were having birth in the middle of the woods. When your baby is born, the first thing you'd want to do is let's extract blood from it? But yet, because it's so routine, you think, oh, well, that's just what they do. They're going to take my baby, they're going to stick a needle in it, and they're going to withdraw blood from my baby. Sure, I'll allow that. That sounds sane, makes sense. But yet, if you don't think about the reasons behind things, you don't question them and you just do what you're told, or if you tell a lie long enough, it becomes the truth, you don't question it, saying, why are you taking blood from my baby? Are you collecting it? Or maybe it's because what is in your blood defines who you are. Because in your blood is what's called DNA. Now, each person's DNA strand is different from anybody else's. So you could fake an ID. You could fake somebody's signature. You can even lie about who you are and make yourself look like somebody else through makeup and costume, or just coincidentally look like that person. But the only thing that could actually define who you are is your DNA strand. And yet they withdraw it from you at birth. And if you know anything about abandonment, if you have a watch and you lose it on the beach, and somebody finds it, and they decide, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to bring that to my local police station and report this lost. Now, a police station will have a lost and found section. And a person has, on average, I believe, it could be different, but an average of 30 days, somebody has to find and report and claim their stolen or lost item. Now, if 30 days goes by, and nobody claims that watch, it's considered abandoned property. So the person that brought it in, even though they did not buy that watch, and it was not their watch, because it was considered abandoned, they can take it home. That is why, if you know anything about Central Park, did you know that Central Park, one day a year, is closed. You ever wonder why? Well, because there is a law, and I used to do real estate when I was younger, so I know this. I don't remember the exact law. But there is a law that states that if you live in a residence that is not yours, and you could prove through getting mail to the house and everything that you're there, after a certain period of time, I think it's 1 year, it might be a little bit more, but if you could prove that you lived in an abandoned house for over a year, or abandoned property for over a year, even if you didn't buy that house and somebody else legally owns it, you become the rightful owner. Do you know somebody owns the moon? They did that through that loophole that nobody claimed it, so one day they decided to make a registered claim on the moon and they won it. So they closed Central Park 1 day a year. So some homeless person or some other person can't say, oh, I've been living in Central Park for the past year. I could prove it. Here's mail that's being delivered here, and then become rightful owners of that property. So when you're born, and they don't tell you about this stuff because, you know, why would they tell you the truth? Because then you wouldn't hand over that stuff, would you? And you wouldn't convert your newborn child into a piece of property where they make a trust in their name. Well, that's what the 13th Amendment is all about when it comes to a legal definition of slave, involuntary servitude. So they're not putting a gun to your head and saying, okay, you need to fill all this out. They're just saying, okay, sign here. And you think, well, that's the routine. That's what you're supposed to do because that's what my mother did, and that's what my grandmother did, and that's what her great-grandmother did. So I guess that's what I must do. Don't question. So your name on your birth certificate, on your Social Security card, on your registration forms, it looks like you, but it's not you. That's the registered trademark that you use against their permission because you don't own the rights to you. Because when you abandon, and your parents abandon your DNA, and you don't claim it, well, it's abandoned property, taken over by someone else. They own the rights to your DNA, which proves who you are. So when you use your driver's license, when you use your birth certificate, you are actually technically committing fraud because you are using a name you don't own, even though it was given to you. Now, how do you get out of it? Well, according to law, there's a thing called full disclosure. You are not, your parents, and you, if you have children, were never given full disclosure. Now, what is full disclosure? Full disclosure is, let's say, for example, you're going to buy a car. And you go to a place and you want to buy a brand new 2016, we'll call it a, whatever. We'll call it a Bird Corporation. It's the Bird Corporation that sells cars. And you want to buy the 2016 Bird Eagle car. Beautiful car, brand new. They show you everything. You go for a test drive, you turn on the radio, you check out the air conditioner, see reclining seats, power windows, GPS, everything. Sold, I want it. They sell it to you for 20,000 fiat debt notes, which of course you don't have, so you're going to have to take out a loan so the banks can create more fiat currency based on the interest, even though they give you nothing. They give you a deposit, which means they give you nothing. You have to pay it back by working and giving them actual currency through your labor. Sounds fair. But let's say they give you the 20,000 debt notes. You're about to take home that car, and they say, okay, tomorrow we're going to deliver it to your door free of charge. Sign all the paperwork. Everything's good to go. You wait for tomorrow. The car arrives on a flatbed. They leave it at your door, hand you the keys, and they leave. And you're like, oh, this is so exciting. I finally got the car of my dreams. Here it is. You go to turn the key, get it ready to start, and nothing. Like, what the hell? It won't start. And after close inspection, you find out when you lift the hood, there is no engine. Well, when you went to sign that, and you could go and complain and say things like, well, there's several things you can do, and this is how they get away with this stuff. Let's say you said, oh, man, that sucks, and I hate that, and God, it's so mad, and you did nothing. You didn't call the company. You didn't call the police. You just said, oh, well, stupid me. Well, are you going to get your money back? No, because you didn't do anything. You didn't contest it. But if you were to call that corporation and say, wait a minute, it was my understanding that I was buying a car with an engine. I mean, I drove it yesterday. It worked. There was an engine in it. Now all of a sudden I got a car with no engine. What gives? I mean, I paid $20,000 for a paperweight. And they turn around and say, well, it's in the contract you signed, so you're stuck. Well, again, if you say, oh, well, I guess I signed it, so according to the law, if I sign a contract, I guess I am stuck. So, okay, thanks, you got me. If you don't make any report of that, you don't make any claim against it, you're not disputing it, so guess what? You now have a $20,000 paperweight. But there is a thing in law called full disclosure. Full disclosure means that when you were about to sign that document, that bill of sale, that salesman, if they were going to give you a car with no engine, they would have to say, okay, just to let you know that even though you rode this car, you checked it out, it has an engine, the car we're selling you will arrive with no engine. Sign here. Now, would you be dumb enough to sign if somebody gave you full disclosure? Of course you wouldn't. So giving full disclosure means you would have a legitimate doubt to not accept their offer. And if you did, well, then there's no excuse, because then you can't complain about it because you already knew about it. Because if you were told that that car you were about to get does not come with an engine and you signed it knowing that, well, they are protected because they did tell you. But because they didn't tell you, you were not given full disclosure. So you could actually go to court and contest, even though that you signed a document and an agreement, you can get out of it because they did not give you full disclosure. And that's the same thing when you were born. Now, just imagine if you're a newborn, about to be a newborn parent, and they said to you, okay, we just want to let you know that when your baby is born, we're going to extract blood from the baby, and we are going to take its DNA, which proves who the baby is. And if you do not claim it at a certain amount of time, we will be the legal owners of the right to the name of your child, because we will own what you have abandoned. And then what we will do is we will make a corporate account in their name where we will earn millions of dollars of interest while putting your child in basically debt for the rest of their lives. And then we cash in on it when the child dies, and you get none of it. So we prepay for everything that you will ever pay for, but now you're paying twice so we can earn interest on our investment. Sign here. How many of you would line up to sign up for that? You probably wouldn't. You know why they get away with it? Because millions of people do not contest it. Think about that. So again, you could say it's crazy. The more people want to dismiss it, the more they want to say it's crazy, and the less they want to spend time looking it up and researching and finding out, the longer they get to continue to own your children and your children's children, and so on and so forth. And they find new and exciting ways to put you further and further in debt, or find it easier and easier to end up in some form of prison where your rights are taken away from you. Because if you look at the 13th Amendment, it talks about legal slavery, but it doesn't protect people incarcerated. So you become a legal slave under that system, which is probably why they can work all day and make 35 cents or whatever they make. They don't even have to pay them that. So there's a lot to learn in this video. The reason is because I like to learn. I like to see this stuff. I wish none of this stuff was true. Believe me, I would be the first one to say, thank goodness. Can't say thank God, because which God are they referring to? So look at all the lies. Look at the words that you say. That's why when a ship goes to its port, it docks. That's why you are brought in the world by a doctor, and you have a certificate of birth, which is nothing more than what they did with ships, registering their packages. You have a country of origin, which is your parents. You have the registration number that is located on each product, your social security number. Ships deliver things. Well, you're in a delivery room. That's why they ship packages. It's all in the words. I have other videos that talk even further detail about legal definitions and words that are hidden, so check those out. That's either one hell of a coincidence where you have hundreds upon hundreds of words that have to do with either death or business or water, because it all has to do with admiralty law, or there might be truth to it, because truth is stranger than fiction. And when people get over the emotional non-believing part and start actually looking these things up, you'll set yourselves free, because I see people all the time asking me, how do we get out of the system? Well, first of all, if you've watched this video, you know how to get out of the system. You just got to contest it. But one person can't do it, 100 people can't do it. It has to be the consent of the governed. That's we the people, not we the trust. So I'm going to end this video right here. Surprisingly, no one asked any questions, which means one of two things. The question and answer segment is not working, or people were just enjoying listening, or didn't have any questions because I was answering them. So to those who took the time to listen, I thank you. What you do with this is totally up to you. I'm used to the fact that I'll get a few thumbs down. I'm used to the fact that I will get a few haters. I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about those of you who are trying to better your future, or maybe your family's future. Evil runs the world when good men do nothing, or good women. So what you do with this is up to you. I'm here to point things out. It's up to you to dismiss it or go further with it. And maybe one day people will free themselves. Until then, keep waiting for Superman to save you and wondering why he's not here and never will be here. There is no savior coming to save you, because they've been saying that for thousands of years. If you want to keep believing the same thing over and over again, well, that's the true definition of insanity. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you learned something. Hit subscribe if you haven't. Share this if you want. And start looking up stuff. Don't take my word for it. Don't automatically dismiss it. Go check. Prove me wrong or prove me right. I'll see you next time.